Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's August 22nd, 2023. We are in the Old Testament, and we are in the book of 1 Samuel, and we're going to read chapter 8 today. All right, so in our story, well, hopefully we've seen that Samuel, as far as the judge goes, he was the guy. He led all of his people back to God, got rid of the idol worship. He's driving out the Philistines out of the country, doing everything that God wanted him to do. But here we are, as we start this, he's older. He's towards the end of his life now, so we're going to jump ahead. And mainly that tells us that, hey, you know what, that was his life, what we've seen so far. That's how he lived his life. So now we get to the end, and we're going to see how he finishes his life. And he finishes his life, and it starts talking about he has two sons. Oops, wait, we've seen that before. Two sons that he's made his successors to judgeship, even though God is the one that appointed. Oh, we've seen that before. Two sons who are corrupt and taking advantage of their. Oh, we've seen that before. So yeah, we get right back to Eli and where this whole story started, and that kind of continues that idea. The judges, people. They bring the people towards God, but then they die and the people drift away. And then we get another judge, but he dies and the people drift away. And then we get another judge and he dies and the people went away. In this case, we got a good judge, but now the people drift away. And this time, we're going to get a break in that cycle. Because the people don't just drift away. They don't just turn their back on God. They reject him outright, because they come and they say, hey, you know what, God? Go, hey, Samuel, we want you to go to God because we want a king. We're going to ignore the fact that all of this has told us that God is our king. We're going to ignore the fact that God has told us, well, I'll give you an earthly king, but it's going to be after my will and not yours. We want a king, and we want him to be just like all these nations that we were supposed to wipe out that we didn't do. All these nations that we know God hated. All these people who are doing things we don't want. We want a king that's just like that. And Samuel hears that, and I don't know if distraught's strong enough to word, but he does what you should do when in a situation like that. He prays, and he turns to God, and he says, okay, God, I don't know what to do. This is what the people want. And God tells him, you know what? They don't reject you. They are rejecting me. And indeed, they are absolutely rejecting God and everything that he meant at this point. So the period of judges is going to end, well, kind of like the period of the patriarchs ended. God gave us a way to get back in a right relationship with him, and we the people reject it. And then we move from the patriarchs to the judges. God said, here's a way you can get back with me. We reject it. In this case, we're going to move into the kings. Now, the people are asking for a king. Again, the thing to realize is it isn't that they're going to have a king that's where the sin is the rejection, and we want to be just like all the other people, because everything in here was God saying, I'm going to raise you up to be a people unlike these people that I'm going to surround you with. So they're rejecting everything about God by asking for this king. But God says, I'm going to give you a king, because that was his plan, was that we have a king, because that's Jesus is going to come up as the king. So we have to get there somehow with a king. And he tells Samuel, all right, I want you to go back to the people and tell them, all right, you want a king? Just like all these other kings, I'm going to give him to you. Here's what he's going to do to you. He's going to oppress you. He's going to tax you. He's going to exploit you. And you're going to get to a point where it's going to get so bad that you're going to come back to me again, just like you always do, and pray, save us from our king. And I'm not going to do it. You're going to get what these are the consequences, and if that's the way you want to go, that's the way you're going to go, and I can't save you from that. That's where it's going to go. Then you're going to have to wait until we get to the point where I was going to do with the king and raise my son to be your king forever. And tell them that part. They should have kind of realized that by now, but they don't get it. And Samuel comes and tells the people, and they say, oh, no. We want a king just like everybody else. Give us the king. And Samuel says, okay, you're going to get a king. And that's where this section ends. So let's go ahead and we're going to read 1 Samuel chapter 8. Now it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. The names of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba. But his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, Look, you are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. So Samuel prayed to the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, Heed the voice of the people and all that they say to you. For they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. According to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them out of Egypt, even to this day, with which they have forsaken me and served other gods, so they are doing to you also. Now therefore heed their voice. However, you shall soundly forewarn them, and show them the behavior of the king who will reign over them. So Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who asked him for a king. And he said, This will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for his own chariots and to be his horsemen, and some will run before his chariots. He will appoint captains over his thousands and captains over his 50s. Will set some to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and some to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers, and he will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, and your olive groves, and give them to his servants. He will take 1/10 of your grain and your vintage and give it to his officers and servants. And he will take your male servants, your female servants, your finest young men, and your donkeys, and put them to his work. He will take 1/10 of your sheep, and you will be his servants. And you will cry out in that day because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, No, but we will have a king over us, that we may also be like all the nations, that our king may judge us, and go up before us and fight our battles. Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he repeated them in the hearing of the Lord. So the Lord said to Samuel, Heed their voice, and make them a king. And Samuel said to the men of Israel, Every man go to his city. May God bless reading of his word, and may God bless you. Bye.